Welcome to Martechify, a community of marketing professionals interested in digital marketing, MarTech, and AI. I'm your host today, Ekaterina Konovalova, and I'm excited to welcome to this conversation two experts that are going to help me to unpack the topic of online abuse, policy violations, synthetic identities, and Take It Down Act. So first, I'd like to welcome Glen Wise from Cinder AI and Alexandra Ryabova, and she's from Wizz App. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right. So, Alexandra and Glenn, I would like to discuss a lot with you today, especially how now companies can combat people impersonating using AI with fake identities. There's so many things that are very relevant right now, especially with new laws and regulations. But first, as usual, I want to hear your story, how you ended up where you are and what inspired you to pursue your careers. So who wants to go first? Glenn?
I can take it.
All right.
Thanks for having me. I'm Glenn. I'm the founder, CEO of Cinder. We are building mission critical infrastructure to allow some of the world's most innovative companies to protect their platforms from abuse, manipulation, and even just junk content on the internet. I started my journey. I know you're just moving from Pittsburgh. I was at Carnegie Mellon, where I started doing some cybersecurity research there. And then from there, I went to Facebook, where I was on a threat intelligence team, understanding how you can go from a novel harm on the internet to policy being written to then detection and enforcement at scale. And through that work, we realized that there's actually, there must be a much faster way of doing it than taking 9 months to go through that full cycle. And that was the initial idea behind Cinder, because there was, Facebook, probably the biggest company that was doing this work. There were so many other companies struggling with the same issues that didn't have nearly the same teams and resources that Facebook did. And we wanted to start Cinder to bring that capability and learn about the good things, but also the mistakes that Facebook made, and build a system that allowed companies to align their products and align their users to their policies and really the way that they want their platform to exist. And we've been building Cinder for the last 4 years now. We just raised our Series B, and we're growing the team. So I'm really excited to chat more about that and hear about also the great work that Wizz is doing.
Yes, Alexandra.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me as well. It's a pleasure, and I'm super happy to discuss how companies tackle safety and synthetic images and anything else. So I'm Alex. I am from Wizz App. I started by I actually did political studies, and I studied how innovation impacts the society. And I think that's what truly brought me here today. You know, Wizz is a social discovery app where we place users into age buckets because we estimate the user's age. And so we put all the minors in relevant groups. And our goal as an app is to give a controlled environment in a very uncontrolled world where users can feel safe. And I think the background, of studying how innovation impacts people, I think it really ties up to this today.
All right. So I look forward to hearing more Wizz App as a case study for Cinder's services. But let's first start with Glenn's company. And when I looked at your offerings and services, it sounds like you tackle and help so many industries. So it could be in marketplaces, it could be general policies, sometimes dating apps. So tell us more about the scale of the company and what businesses you're helping.
Yeah, so we approach this from looking at how the adversary or how bad actors approach the space. And what we found is that typically bad actors are oftentimes targeting multiple services at once, and they're abusing multiple services at once. And we found that you can actually learn a lot by working across these different product areas and these different industries in order to build a really robust system for combating bad actors and combating abuse. And the focus of Cinder really, when we work with a customer, is to first understand what's the product and what is the experience they're trying to enable. And then what are the policies that they have in place that really are the codification of that experience? And the Cinder platform, the way that that works is that you represent your policies within Cinder, and Cinder helps guide your product and your users to align with those policies to enable the community to actually behave in the way that that's intended, rather than it going off the rails or it becoming untenable. And one thing that we found is that I think right now is a particularly unique time because these problems existed, at the dawn of the internet. And now with AI, a lot of these problems are becoming exponentially worse. And it makes systems, and AI systems in particular, so much more important for helping companies keep their platforms safe and aligned for their users.
So can you share some examples and how exactly you are helping prevent online abuse?
Yeah. I think a really common example is uh, when we work with a company and they say that they want to, they want to keep adult content off of their platform, right? This is a really common use case that, our marketplace customers use, our social media customers use, our generative AI customers use. And what we do is we first align on what is that policy definition. And then we actually develop a model in line with the specific customer's definition of that policy. And then we deploy it. And so content will go through it and get detected. If something's particularly bad or maybe an edge case, that can even get sent to an expert for human review and human in the loop, right? If you need to reach out to a user or offer help to a user, that's where those things are really helpful. But it really allows companies to detect harmful content at scale, no matter what the policy is. And it could be something, like adult content. It could be something like hate speech. It can even be something we help customers with, like low quality content or spam and things like that as well. So it really depends on what is the customer intending to do, and how can they do that as simply as possible.
What about online fraud when we talk about marketplaces?
Yeah, that's another common use case. And you can think of this in terms of two ways. Typically, there are content signals, right? So, like a chat message and the message content, or like an image and the image content. And the other one is behavioral signals. So, how is a user using your system in a way that could be adversarial, that might not include content? So, fraud, for example, is a pretty classic example of understanding behavioral signals. Another common one that we see is like scraping, right? That's another one where behavioral signals are really important for detecting scraping. But it really starts with understanding the problem that you're looking to solve, the policy around that, and then the detection systems and signals that you look at depend on what that problem is. So if it's fraud, it'd be like something like behavioral. If it's content, of course, that's like content and image detection. Sometimes there's even combinations of both. If you get really complicated, like really complex networks that get involved of bad actors and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then maybe, Alexandra, you can share an example using Wizz App as a case study. How does it work on your end?
Yeah, sure. So we are a social network, and our goal is that the connections between our users are safe. And this means that you prevent, as Glen said, bad actors from trying to take your platform and invert the sense of what the platform is supposed to be doing. So when we reached out to Cinder, our use case was pre-moderation of content. And what is very important on Wizz is that since some of our users are minors, we want the content to be catched somewhere in the sky, before the user who is intended to receive it actually gets it on their phone. And so we work together on preventing any explicit content, any harmful content, any content that wasn't supposed to be on the platform to be actually seen on the screen even before it gets sent. And this is where it comes a bit tricky, is that first you need AI, right? When you work at this scale, you also need to be very, very quick. And you also need to make sure that your policies are clear and that the things you catch are the right things and you catch them at a good time. And there they have been extremely helpful.
Well, let's talk about policies as well as A few years ago, before even the rise of AI, when people were tagging and checking content, I remember doing a research study, and it was an India team checking the responses from American consumers. And every time they would mention the store Dick's Sporting Goods, it was flagged for inappropriate content because they did not understand that it's the name of the very famous store here. So, do you have this kind of mismatches, mishaps where AI may interpret flag some content that is not offensive, but it sounds like Dick's Sporting Goods, and vice versa? Have you seen examples like that, and how do you solve it?
I can take this one maybe. I had something come up last week that made me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, AI is incredible at scale, but there are some cases that come up and they make you smile. And we have a tool that notifies us when a user is in distress, and it notifies us signals of self-harm. And there was a user who was messaging others and saying, "I want to dye my hair," but the AI was scanning it as "I want to die."
Yes.
And we actually had to clean this up and make sure that it works well. However, you know, in those cases, you prefer to have a mistake like this and have a false positive and make sure that your platform is safe, maybe extremely safe, than go into a false negative and have something that was supposed to be caught, but it wasn't.
Yes. And can you give us just maybe some measure of a scale? How many transactions like this happening every day or every minute? I'm sure it's huge.
Yeah, our volumes are huge. We are at around 800 billion messages per year, which is a huge number, and it means that every second that we're speaking, there are at least 20 messages exchanged in the moment. So you need to learn how to be able to prioritize the harms, to be able to catch them and catch them at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about policies, because it sounds like this is a fundamental document, needs to be reviewed by a legal team and crafted with so many professionals in mind. And it's a question for Glen. How do you work? Let's say you are onboarding a new client, a company, and you can actually tell us more about who your clients are. I'm sure it's a wide variety of maybe small to mid-sized to large enterprise clients. So what is the overall process, and how you take the policy and then follow, implement, and catch the violators? Can you give us that hypothetical examples? Walk us through the whole chain of events that are happening related to policies and enforcing and kind of catching the abuse before it got too bad.
At Cinder, we say that policies really are the center of the universe, where you can't detect what you're not looking for, and so the first step is always defining what you're looking for. And the great thing about Wiz is that the Wiz team is really opinionated, and they really care about that user experience. We talked to some customers where they might have less experience on the policy side, or some customers where they have entire orgs dedicated, right, and teams of people dedicated to writing all these very nuanced policies. And so it's really important for us to meet customers where they are on that policy journey, and help them either uncover where there might be overlaps, uncover where there might be gaps, right? It's actually really common for us to work with a customer where they might make one decision on either the same or similar content on potentially two different policies. And it's really important for us to align, right, to give the context to the model, to align on really high quality ground truth data as it relates to that policy. So ideally, when you're working through this content, you have this golden set, this really great, accurate set of ground truth data that's aligned to your policy that you can measure everything against. And so if you have a team of humans, right, like the classic way of doing it, you can measure that human accuracy against your policy, against your ground truth. When you develop AI, you should be able to also measure that AI accuracy against that ground truth data and against those evaluation sets on your policy. And that becomes really key. And when something changes, right? So when you see something and you say, right, this is incredibly common, where you see something and you realize that, okay, this actually right now is allowed because we might have a policy gap somewhere. Now, right, we saw this all the time at Facebook, where there'd be some new weird thing that happened, right, that no one's ever thought of, right? The world is dynamic and the world changes all the time. And it's like, okay, we never actually had to think about what that policy should be on the platform. And we see, this is why listening to users is so important. We see an uptick in user reports on this, but it might not be violative. What we should do is, again, this is up to the platform, but the platform might decide to actually write a new policy to address that. And again, that cycle then continues, right? When they write the policy, then they get a highly curated set of ground truth, and then they can use that to then measure the accuracy of people, use that to measure the accuracy of AI that's being trained. And the cycle repeats until, I guess, all harm is people stop causing harm. But, we see that there's always new things that are coming out and new harm types that are coming out and new ways that, bad actors are trying to abuse systems. And so it's really important to be able to develop that policy really quickly and on the fly.
Yeah. So what are the newest, the latest scams? I assume everybody passed the era of Nigerian prince sending you money. So I assume with AI, impersonation, fake identities, maybe people stealing somebody's identity and creating a new video avatar. So can you tell us more about what you're seeing lately, maybe in the past 6 months? And also, what do you anticipate for the rest of the year? What people should be alert and kind of watch out for the newest, most sophisticated scams?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. But Alex, I'm also curious what you all have been seeing. But exactly, we've seen just a rapid increase in the sophistication of attacks, right? In the ability for even a foreign actor who maybe never had access to a market due to reach, due to language barriers, due to whatever that might look like, now is able to craft a perfect phishing message in a perfect English or whatever language that target is on, with perfectly researched context around that target, and being able to do it with like minimal to no effort at all. And I think that's like the really big thing that we've seen is that the barrier to entry of conducting highly sophisticated attacks has dropped down to basically zero. And so all the classic attacks that we've seen occur at just a much stronger rate, right? Including things like impersonation, where people have always been trying to impersonate, but now it's so much easier, right? And that's sort of like the theme is like, sure, there are also novel attacks, or you have deep fakes. It's a huge problem. You have, people trying to, again, write these scam messages and conduct phishing campaigns, deep fake audio even. But these are things that people have tried in the past, but you typically had to be really good, right? You might have to be really good at Photoshop or whatever that might be to do that. But now it's really anyone with a laptop and a couple AI prompts is able to do really sophisticated work. And I think that trend is going to continue. I think we're going to see very sophisticated, highly realistic looking attacks, where this is where things like behavioral detection start to come into play, and really nuanced content detection to take these things down, to really ensure that you are offering an authentic experience for your users and a very high quality, safe environment for your users.
How do you do that? If indeed you can use AI prompt and generate very realistic images. I've seen all these pranks that, I invited a plumber to my house, and then it's a very good looking plumber, and the wife sends those pranks to her husband, and he's furious and comes home because it's literally using your environment. It looks very realistic. So on a business scale, how do you combat that? And how are you able to analyze the behavior and prevent it?
I think the first step is caring about it, right? And you have companies like Wiz that are putting that investment to actually care about and do something about it. And right, so that's like the first step is like recognizing that we want to create a safe environment for users. And the second step is, basically a technical implementation. With AI, a lot of these, right, just as an example, a lot of these large labs are doing things like synth ID, right, which is fingerprinting of AI generated content that allows you to say that's AI generated, right? There's some other sort of more specific technical ways of understanding, via understanding like pixelization and understanding how the content was rendered. But honestly, the first step is just recognizing that a platform should do something and implementing that policy. And then once you have that, it becomes, okay, what are the technical methodologies that are out there? And that's always going to be evolving as, as the abuse is evolving. But the important thing really is to commit to make that a priority for a company. That's a really important thing that we've seen, lead to satisfaction of users, growth of users, retention of users. We've seen that just investment be a really, really pay off in the long run.
Yes. And Alexandra, maybe you can tell us more about Take It Down
Yeah.
Act and
Sure, I
synthetic
can
identities.
actually jump in on how companies prevent this. I think I completely agree. First step is caring, right? Because once you've identified the problem, you know that the problem exists and you know that you have to solve it. And I think this is just trust and safety, like purely it's just finding a problem and then being a problem solver and thinking all that night and day and about how to make it work. What we saw is that sometimes the most simple solution is the best way to detect AI. An example from Wiz is today when you create an account, we estimate your age. When we estimate your age, we take your estimation picture and we compare it to the profile picture you put on your screen. And since the age estimation photo is instant, it really helps us to prevent a lot of synthetic content that can be produced. Hopefully none of the people are listening to it and now can deblock the system. But the way it works is that since it's an instant photo, we check your liveliness during the scan and we make sure that you're not pixelated. We make sure that you're not just trying to add a photo of somebody else. And once you put it on the profile, before we used to use this technology to prevent bullying or just impersonation, as you said, in the cases 10 years ago. Now it's helping us to identify AI because it's actual real people. And if you're a real person, maybe you can enhance a tiny bit, like you make your eyes a little bit of makeup and you add a little bit here and there, but you stay you. And this is the most important in the technology today. And it helps us to identify a lot of safety failures that could have been in other places.
Okay. And what about, let's say a person has a real profile, but then in their communication, they want to change something or use more synthetic identities. Do you catch it later? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, of course. I think it's important also, as I said, thinking about the basics. You try to prevent harmful or explicit content. Even if it's synthetic content, it still stays harmful or explicit, So therefore, you manage to detect it because it is explicit or because an image is an image and the content stays its content, Even if it's AI generated on Wiz, we take it down before it lands somewhere. So I think it's staying true to your principles, which is very important, caring about your product, and then making sure that the true to principle part covers all of it together. And when it doesn't, you reach out to guys like Cinder and you go and brainstorm together on a new solution.
So does it mean, let's say, if one user wants to send something inappropriate to another user, you are able to intercept that communication before it reaches the other user?
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Glen, what other trends do you see? We just touched on kind of online abuse and prevention, but as AI developing and more younger people are using it. So for example, I heard that when kids use AI, they have very unconventional questions, such as how many gorillas can fit in a bus? And AI is so not used to this kind of logic that it starts hallucinating and give consequent answers with really harmful or bad responses, such as what are a good pizza topping? And I will say glass and rocks. So have you seen any of these trends, especially as we talk about younger audiences, where AI is breaking the system and the script from non-conventional thinking of the kids and producing really bad output because it's confused?
Yeah, I think so. We work with a number of AI companies, right? So companies that are building models or distributing models. We also work with companies that might be used to distribute content that a model created. And through this, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but really the most important thing there is policy, right? Is saying that, when a child asks these questions, we want to have it fit within these bounds. And because AI is offering a non-deterministic output, this becomes slightly trickier to do because, well, actually potentially even simpler to do in certain aspects because you can do a lot of testing, right? So in AI, this is called red teaming, where you can actually red team and test a lot of these models on these specific use cases before the models go out. What you should also do is have real-time detection of how people are using it. So in case your testing missed something or something in flight looked different. And of course, you should have detection on the systems that if I use some system to create an image, and I go to a different platform, social network, to share that image, each one of those points should have its own detection, right? It's like where you're cooking, you should have seasoning in every step, right? It's the same thing where through that process, through like curating training data for your model, to pre-release testing and red teaming, to in-flight model guardrails, to the social media companies and the marketplaces or wherever that content could show up, also having detection there as well. So it really requires a tiered approach for everyone to care to really stop these things from happening throughout the entire chain.
Okay. And Alexandra, do you have anything else to add?
I think Glen is he's super strong on the technical side of it, right? In my head, when I hear this question, I'm thinking that today young users and young people are very tech savvy. It's no longer the same people as, I don't know, a couple of years ago. The technology is advancing really quickly. Young people are really quickly adapting to it. And in my head, the most important thing that we should also look at is user education and overall educating not only people on your platform, but trying to bring those conversations on the table, the dinner table with your family or at school, and trying to explain that AI is an answer, but it's also a hypothetical answer and it's not a solution to all the problems. And that as any source of information, you should ask it and doubt it and ask it again. And, as you said, you mentioned the glass on pizza. It's something that, if we would start learning those things in school and try to speak more about digital literacy, I think we could solve a couple of questions like this before they actually come and platforms are held responsible for them.
Yes. So is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience?
Sure. We wanted to talk about the Takedown Act.
Yes.
That's a step forward, I think it's a big step forward for the industry. There is a lot of debate around it, but overall, I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that platforms are now held responsible for those actions and now are helping victims in those situations. And I think one of the solutions, for example, on Wizz, is actually taking down this content before it arises, right? And this is what we were speaking about. And this helps us to prevent a lot of those cases and a lot of those situations. But also platforms like Cinder help us in case there is a victim that asks us for help and asks us to take it down quickly. I think platforms like Cinder are wonderful in terms of you're quickly able to see what passed on your platform, what happened. You're able to investigate the situation. And I think it's truly the industry collaboration, all of this, that makes the act powerful.
And let's explain the Take It Down Act for people who might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, sure. So in simple words, it's a simple act, right? The act says that if, let's say, a victim of unconsensual image sharing reaches out to a platform, the platform needs to take down the content within 48 hours. And it can be real content, it can be synthetic content, but we need to take it down. And I think it's a simple thing, but it's a step forward. I think it's putting those conversations on a table. And as I said earlier, the more we have those conversations, the more people are willing to speak about it freely, and the more we have the right vocabulary to speak about it, and the more users are getting and people are getting educated on those big issues. And even having this conversation now might actually help some people, hear about it and reach out to a platform where they might have had an issue.
All right, a question for Glen, especially Facebook. Real example, I and my other colleagues noticed impersonation. So somebody used my image, my first name and a different last name, and created fake profiles. I tried to report it many times on Facebook, and there's no human. So basically, there's that automated message where you ask them to take it down, and they would maybe respond within a couple of weeks, said, well, we didn't see any community violations, it's all fine, and they continued to keep that fake profile. And I assume it could be used for phishing, for some scamming activity. Would that fall under Take It Down Act? And would the company be liable? What is happening? Why nobody is responding to this kind of inquiries?
Yeah, I think with well, one, that's like this is a really common thing that's happening to people all the time. And um I think to Alex's point, there are so many people that don't even realize that you can even like report things in the first place. Right. So that is a piece of this, is ensuring that people are educated to know that like you are a victim and you can go and get help here from platforms. Now, right, once that request hits a platform, how can a platform actually do something about it? Of course, I can't talk to whatever is happening at Facebook now, or even before. I wasn't on that team, but uh, I think there's some really great technology out there that, even as Alex was talking about, to allow you to verify your identity and verify your liveness and verify that you're a real person. So when these things happen, you can, right, say, hey, I didn't give consent to this, and this should be, right, this should be taken down, this should be actioned against. And allowing companies to respond to those things really, really quickly, because the companies want to protect their users, and the users have a right, especially now, to be protected. And a lot of these solutions do, right, in order to respond to the scale, do utilize AI. There's a lot of really great hashing technology that's out there as well, to say, hey, here's an image that I really don't want to be online. It belongs to me. Industry, can you make sure that this never shows up anymore? And the technology is really good at doing that. Right. And then it starts to get into things like we said before, understanding this is my likeness. I own access to my likeness, having the technology in place to ensure that people don't abuse that in any way. And if they do, responding to that as fast as possible. I think a lot of this technology has been coming out lately, which has been, I think, really exciting for just making online spaces way safer than the manual. The sort of pre-AI process to doing this was really manual, and it required a huge team to scale out that like is really difficult for companies to do. It's really expensive for companies to do. It's really really inefficient, as you just pointed out. So a lot of this technology is going to help make that process a lot faster than it was in the past.
And how can a person verify that they own the right to that image? For example, their photo ID can look different than their great glamorous photo that was stolen on Craigslist or other platforms. So how the real owner can actually prove that it's them and they have the rights to that image?
We use something very similar at Wizz for age verification, right? It's the same technology, it's the same AI, it's the same probably company that helps others in these cases. So I think in your use case, we would compare your profile pictures to your ID photo and to your live photo of yourself. And I think I actually once had a case similar, like a few months back, where I got hacked, and I was very impressed by my process of getting the account back. So of course those things happen, but as Glen said, I think as an industry, of course there is more harm, but there is also more good that we can do to protect the users. And as long as the companies care, I think they find quick solutions.
Okay. All right. And then for Cinder company, do you act as an intermediary on the back end? So for example, if we pick that hypothetical example with Facebook or other platform, will you be serving them on the back end and handling all these disputes, or it's still the company addressing everything? So in case me reclaiming my image and asking them to take down the profile, who would be ultimately involved in the process, and how does it work from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, so our customers are really in full control of what they want to do, and that's really important to us because again, we think every company is unique to their own values, right, to their own policies. So it's really important for Cinder to actually allow our customers to have that view in how they want to. Right, we have some companies that uh, uh, deal with, they're maybe a marketplace and they deal with large brands that are doing very close relationship selling with. And even sometimes these brands might accidentally post something where instead of like taking down the whole brand, you have to go talk to the social media manager of that brand and say, hey, you really can't be posting stuff like this. Right. And so that's a different way of responding to another company might have, millions of users that they just don't have the capacity to have that white glove service. Right. And again, it's one, let's try to make it so people can do that. But also every company is just different in how they want to enact these things. And so we want to give the technology to companies so they can choose, how they want to interact with their users, how they want to enforce these things. Which policies specifically do they want to enforce? What's the severity and prioritization? There's a lot of really difficult questions, and really important questions that smart platforms like Wiz deal with every single day. That is almost separated from technology, right? There's like actually fundamental like company and business and product questions that come first. And at Cinder, we want to provide the technology that makes it as easy as possible to automate it or to enforce that, where the tools shouldn't be the limiting factor. You should be able to fully express how you want to enable those policies.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Alexandra and Glen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.